all right.
All right, here we go, Jill Dempsey.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto where you
Welcome to episode 1518 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city outside the Dome. Join me August 4th at Christie Pitts. I'm recording live at 2 p.m. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making her Toronto Mic debut, is a voice you know well from Metro Morning on CBC Radio 1. It's Jill Dempsey. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
Listening to your voice in these headphones, I have the same feeling I felt when May Potts dropped by and I was hearing her voice in the headphones, and I'm like, how many hours have I heard this voice on CFNY when I was back listening to CFNY? But your voice, I hear it. I'm listening to CBC Radio 1. What a voice.
Thank you. I mean, it didn't start out that way. In my early days in this career, I didn't think the voice had enough gravitas. I thought I sounded too much like a girl. And so in many ways, when people say, I love the voice, I'm like, really?
You're surprised, right?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I don't think anybody loves their voice initially when they hear themselves.
Well, you haven't talked to enough old-time FM rock jocks who can't get enough of their voice.
And they love it. And they love it.
Yeah, and they won't shut up because they know they've got that voice.
They got the pipes.
Listen to some of that great voice. Now, I happen to like your voice, but part of it is the familiarity, right? Like when you hear a voice, it starts to become a calming influence. Like when I hear Jill Dempsey's voice, it just sort of feels right. Like that's a voice I'm used to hearing. I've been hearing it for years, apparently decades. I'm going to fact check all this. Shout out to Robert Lawson. We're going to find out your origin story and everything. But how many years have we Torontonians been hearing your voice on CBC Radio?
Well, I've been with the CBC. I just celebrated my 35th anniversary.
Is that possible, Jill? Like that's 35.
I'm going to say I started at 10.
Well, yeah, even that math, I'm suspect. I have to do some crunching here.
But Metro Morning, it's been just over 20 years working on Metro Morning.
Okay, so we're going to get this entire story. Thanks for being here. Nice to meet you. Do you want to crack open our Great Lakes beer here? So,
because it's hot
but do it
today.
right in front of the mic. It's super hot. I bet you had to say that 100 times this morning. Okay, right in front of the mic. Okay, Jill Dempsey's drinking a premium lager from Great Lakes Brewery, everybody, and I'm going to crack open a...
Thank you
I just heard the noise. We start in 10 minutes, Jill. I guess you're not allowed to start early on CBC. Everything's atomically timed. You know, you're precise, but...
I feel like my whole life is timed.
But here... You got here early. I said, let's go.
Let's do it.
Not the CBC. Okay, even though we'll talk about my shirt in a moment, but let me crack open a Sunnyside Session IPA.
Nice.
See, I've done it a few times, Jill, but cheers to you.
Cheers to you. Thank you. On this hot summer day.
Is it hot enough for you, Jill? Although I guess you said, you'd be saying on CBC Metro Morning, drink plenty of water. That would be the message. Drink lots of water.
I brought my water too.
Okay, but I think, what's better than drinking a lot of water? Let's drink some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery. So thanks for cracking one open with me. It's always more fun to drink with a guest. What kind of heat are we talking about? I don't want to put you on the like you're on the job or whatever, reporting the news to us Torontonians. But there's heat alerts and pools are open late. This is going to be a hot one.
30 degrees, the high today with the Humidex 35. But Mother Nature always shifts things around, so that's just a prediction. But it's, and with the Humidex, it's...
So 35 with the Humidex, you said?
What
is, I need to know this from you, Jill Dempsey. This is on the definitive record. What is the heat inside this polyester shirt I'm wearing, okay? Because I'm telling you now, I just put this on.
I would say Humidex at 40.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was at Christy Pitt's talking to people during the Toronto Maple Leafs baseball game. So while I say that, I'm going to tell you, you're taking home with you a lovely book on the history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So they play at Christy Pitt's, and it's free, and it's awesome, and it was a great day yesterday. But at the very end, I'm winding down, and I see there's a mascot. It's a bulldog. Runs around Christy Pitt's talking to kids. Actually, I noticed a lot of adults want selfies with the bulldog, actually. So she's in this mascot thing yesterday, and it was really sunny and warm. And she's dripping. She looks like she's a young lady, and she's dripping with sweat, and she's kind of discreetly trying to bring down the the dog costume around her ankles just to get a little air. And I said, I got to talk to this woman. Like, I need to find out what it's like in that costume. I think I now know what it's like because I'm wearing this 1967 CBC shirt that I always put on for you CBC veterans. And it doesn't breathe. Like, I am so hot in this thing.
You almost need to wire it with a mister.
Oh, what? Oh,
You
yeah,
know
I see.
those misters?
At first, I'm like, Mister who?
Mr. Who?
Okay, but that would be a good idea, Jill. That's why you're here. Okay, I want to learn about how you ended up at the CBC and your journey to Metro Morning, and we're going to cover all of this. But I want to thank Great Lakes for sending over beer. You're going to take home some fresh craft beer with you.
Thank
You've got your Toronto Maple Leafs baseball book. Great game yesterday. I'll be back there. What day will I be back? August 4th. I'm back recording from Christy Pitt, so come by and say hi. I'm beyond the left field fence. You'll find me recording. We're going to get these out of the way right now. Jill Dempsey, there is a frozen lasagna in my freezer from Palma Pasta that you're taking home with you.
Oh, my gosh.
Did you know you were getting this swag?
No, I didn't.
And you're allowed, I just want to make sure, I don't want to get into it. You're allowed to accept this, right? This is all under a certain amount.
I will say thank you.
Okay, I just don't want to get you in trouble, Jill. Okay, and what else do I have to give you? Measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home. So was there yeah, there you go. That's courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of this community since 1921. So you can measure whatever you wish. Yeah. And a little piece of advice before we get to your origin story. Recyclemyelectronics.ca. If you, Jill, have any, old electronics, old devices, a drawer full of old cables, don't throw it in the garbage. The chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code. You'll find out where you can drop that off to be properly recycled. Jill Dempsey, please tell me, when did you realize you wanted to be, on the radio or work in media, be a journalist? What's your origin story? Let's talk about it.
I didn't really know. The idea, like a lot of young people, you reach a point where I don't know what I want to do with the rest of my life. What do I want to do? What's going to fulfill me and make me happy? And I actually took a year off of high school. And my brother, who's quite brilliant, came to me and said, this is what I think you should do. And he had researched a number of schools for journalism and broadcasting. And he said, watching you and knowing what you're interested in. And this is what I thought, really? I can, someone's going to pay me to talk. Someone's going to pay me to sort of do what I love, which is consume the news and follow elections and what's going on in the world. And from that point on, I was smitten. And so I went to Canadore College in North Bay for 2 years. I worked in Sudbury, I worked in North Bay, and then I worked as a writer and a producer at City TV for 7 years.
Okay, stop right there.
Stop right there.
Stop. I just had Joel Goldberg came out to Christy Pitt's yesterday, and I had him on the show yesterday. We were talking about, we were just reminiscing about, first 99 Queen Street East and then 299 Queen Street West. So I need to find out about City TV. First of all, just so I know, are you a Toronto gal? Like, where are you born and raised?
I was born in Sudbury.
Okay, that explains all these northern locales I'm hearing. Okay.
I was born in Sudbury. We lived in Burlington for my grade school years.
Shout out to the Spoons.
Exactly. And then in my grade 7 year, we moved to Sault Ste. Marie. My mother was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie. My father thought it was a great idea that that's where we go to live. So he took a transfer. We went to Sault Ste. Marie. So my high school years were really spent there. And I have relatives there as well.
Okay.
So.
Now, when you were in Burlington, were you a Spoons fan? I need to know these things.
At that stage, the Spoons didn't exist.
Okay, you know what? See, I've got you.
But I know the Spoons and I love them.
Be flattered by all this, okay, Jill? Obviously I'm off a little bit here. Okay, so what were you doing at City TV? Give me a little bit of like who were you working with? Who did you have anything to do with the great Peter Gross? I need to know what was going on at City TV.
I knew Peter Gross at the time.
Let's slow this down, Jill. Holy smokes! Tell me about what you were doing there first of all.
Well, I started as a writer, and it was quite intimidating but exciting at the same time. It was very fast paced, as you know. It was a real cast of characters. Gord Martineau, Mark Daly, Deanie Petty was there when I arrived. So it was
Okay, hold on. I know there's just too much. Too much. But when you say the name Mark Daly, I'm contractually obligated to play this right here.
The following program contains adult themes, nudity, and coarse language. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
Oh, we missed
Tell
that
me about
voice.
Mark Daly. What a voice.
He had such a great voice, and he was really immersed in his beat, which was crime. And he was a great storyteller.
And buddies with all cops, right? Like he was getting scoops from.
Yeah, it was a very different sort of take on how to do the news. City TV sort of forged their own path and the way they wanted to tell stories and how they wanted to do stories. And so it was really a great learning opportunity for me to sort of be in the front row and watch that unfold.
Now you said Deanie Petty too, who's also an FOTM. So sadly, I never got an opportunity to have Mark Daly on the program. He left us far too soon. But Deanie Petty's been on the show. Fascinating woman. Like, so what was it like working with Deanie?
Oh, we had a lot of fun. Deanie's quite a character, and I actually saw Deanie a couple of years ago, and it was great to sort of reconnect with Deanie. And again, like another trailblazer, you know, think of Deanie Petty. She flew around in a pink helicopter. Yeah. You know, she was forging a path for women in this industry when there weren't that many role models, you know, so she was really a trailblazer, and it wasn't easy for women in those days. It was tough.
It was tough. You know, they only this year ended City Line.
Yeah.
Like, so Deanie Petty's the original host of City Line, and then Marilyn Dennis takes over. And my goodness, I should know who took over after that. Maybe you do, but lost track of my City Line. But bottom line is, they only canceled that show or ended that show's run in 2024.
Yeah.
That was quite a run. Deanie Petty. Okay. And any other names you can drop? I encourage the City TV name drops. Like, was Lauren Honickman there?
Yes, Lauren was there before he pursued his career as in the legal profession. Yep, Lauren was there.
Love me some Lauren Honickman. I can't get enough. Honestly, he's the kind of guy who I'll get a text out of the blue. Lauren just heard whatever.
Yeah. I used to tease Lauren a lot.
What, the mustache? What's going on?
Oh yeah,
here?
we'd have some fun. And
you know who he adores with all his heart and soul is Bob Dylan.
Yes, he does. That I remember about Lauren.
Remember everything about Lauren. Okay, who else? Who else? Like, I'm just this won't be the whole. I know you did. Apparently, you worked at CBC at some point, but I got to get the City TV Phil here.
JD Roberts was there at the time.
Okay, did you see that coming? Like, were you like, oh yeah, you know, I could see this guy as a big American news anchor?
Well, he was very driven. Yeah. You know, he was very intent on rising through the ranks. So I don't think that was a huge surprise.
Did you know he's tied with Christopher Ward for being the first VJ on Much Music? You knew this, right? You're nodding. Okay, this is radio, Jill. You know, can you nod on Metro Morning?
Nothing shakes in the head, right? Sorry about that.
You have to verbalize. Okay, then last couple of names I'll throw at you because I'm trying to think of what era you're in. But what about Harold Hossein? Was he there yet? Where are we in the...
After I left.
Okay, so where are we? Early 80s? Where are we here?
No, I joined the CBC in 1989.
Okay, so you're at City TV, though, in the mid-80s.
Mid-80s, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else we can name check real quick here? What about Howie doing sports?
Oh my gosh, of course. Who doesn't love Jimmy? Yeah, lovely.
Him and Peter Gross are still tight. They go to Saratoga once a year.
I can see that.
Bet on the ponies.
I can see that too.
Okay, so what did you learn? I mean, now I got to ask you, like, your interactions with Moses. So yesterday, Joel Goldberg was on the program because he came out to Christie Pitts to watch some Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. And I asked him, because now Joel works at Zoomer, which Moses runs. Like, is he still hands-on? He was always very involved. And according to Joel Goldberg, he's still very engaged with the stuff going on at Zoomer. What was it like with this visionary overlord Moses?
I didn't have a lot of interaction with Moses when I was there. I mean, most of my interaction was in the newsroom itself. And really, I was sort of intent on developing my skills, getting to know the city. becoming the best journalist that I could. And so from that vantage point, there were a lot of opportunities that were presented to me in order to make my audition tapes for the CBC. My boss at the time, Stephen Hurlbut, set time aside in the studio so I could do my audition tapes.
Was he good to you?
To me, he was, yes.
Because to you, good. I'm glad. Because I just had John Gallagher on the show, and man, he doesn't like that guy.
Well, I know different people had their own experiences,
Sure.
but
he was good to you.
Well, I have to be grateful for him carving out that time so that I could create an audition tape that was professional and
Right.
caught the eye of people. I had interviews at the CTV station in Calgary and CBC. So
Okay, so he helped there. Now, how did you get the gig at City TV?
I went in and I was interviewed. I had friends who worked there and they said that they were looking for a writer. I was actually working as a reporter and a host in Northern Ontario at the time, but I felt it was a good opportunity to get into a larger market. And so I was interviewed and I got the job.
Okay, amazing. Was there any opportunity to get in front of the camera or maybe even on the air at, like, I'm thinking like one of the Chum stations, which was kind
No.
of in the same family? No opportunity to get on that
No,
side
there
of the mic?
wasn't.
All right, so all behind the scenes. But you come to CBC, you said in 1989, is that right?
That's right. And I was hired as an anchor for CBC Calgary. So I left Toronto and actually, my parents lived in Calgary at the time. And so I stayed with my parents.
How
and-
convenient,
How
Jill.
convenient, yes. So I had a house here and I went to Calgary and started anchoring the late news. And I did that for 18 months until the big cuts came from the Mulroney government in late 1990.
Okay, maybe before I dismiss you, we might revisit potential cuts and et cetera, et cetera. Nothing will get you in trouble, Jill. Don't worry. You're in a safe audience here. But you're in Calgary in 1989. Is the goal at this point to put in your reps, learn as much as you can, and then get back to the big smoke here?
I mean, eventually I wanted to get back to Toronto, but I also knew that there were a lot of opportunities for me in Calgary. And I'm certainly grateful for that because when I arrived, so I was hired in June, that summer they were starting what was called Newsnet, which became
Well, it was News World first, right?
as News World.
Right.
Yep. And I started backfilling on News World in September. So it was pretty meteoric for me to go from a local late night
Wait,
host to
September
national television.
89?
Yep.
So you get to Calgary in June 89,
Yes.
and by September 89, you're
I'm
backing up.
backfilling on a national program.
Amazing. That is
was
amazing
amazing.
because that's you were behind the scenes at City TV.
Yes.
You were writing, you were producing, and now your first opportunity to get to be anchoring late night news in Calgary, and then 2 months later, it's
Yeah.
happening for you.
It's happening, but also there was a lot of great people there who gave incredible feedback and support and mentoring. So it was a really great time for me.
Now, pardon my ignorance, Jill. I do wear the CBC shirt circa 1967, but I never worked at the CBC. But News World happens in Toronto, doesn't it?
Now it does.
Oh, now it does. Okay,
But in order to get the license, when they went on the air in 1990, they actually did programming out of Vancouver, Calgary, and Halifax, and a small amount of programming from Toronto.
Okay, you're full of the fun facts here. Okay, so you're in Calgary, you're anchoring the late night news, you're doing this backup hosting for News World.
Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, you don't really have an opportunity to cut your teeth, and then 2 months later you're on a national network. That like how was it? Baptism by fire? Like how
It
was
was
that
a
for
little
you?
scary. I'm not going to lie. I would watch my tapes 24 hours after and critique them. How do I get better? What do I do? What mistake? I never would sort of watch my tape saying, wow, you're fantastic. I'd always sort of critique them and dissect them and say, okay, that question wasn't quite right. That could be framed differently. You can do that differently. So, and they gave me room to sometimes you have to make mistakes in order to learn, which is something I teach as well. And I sort of tell my students that all the time. You have to be prepared to make a mistake, own it, and learn from it. And the worst kinds of mistakes are you don't own it, you don't learn from it, and you keep making the same mistakes.
Okay, in this vein, because I knew you had done quite a bit of training and teaching, and I was going to ask you about that at some point actually in this conversation. But I hear from some podcasters and broadcasters that they can't listen back to their own show. Okay, like so personally,
It's painful.
But I for a long time I hated my. You talked about not liking your voice. No one likes their voice. You're preaching to the choir on that one. Like I hated my voice for a very long time, and then I just got used to it. But I always made myself listen back because I would cringe, and it was painful, like you said. But Mike, why do you interrupt so much? Your guest is telling a story, and then back off, silence, let them finish. Like I would hear things, and I would I'd be very critical of myself, but I would work on improving. And I can't imagine I could ever have got better. Not that I'm any good now, Jill, but the CBC has never called me.
I think you're doing okay.
Wait a minute. Is that CBC calling right now? Okay, holy smokes. I'm going to be on Metro Morning Monday morning. But I can't imagine improving without listening back to myself critically. So what do you say to somebody if you have a student or somebody who can't listen back to themselves? Like, how do you get better if you don't listen back?
Yeah, it's difficult. And I tell them, no one likes to hear themselves. No one likes to watch themselves.
Unless you sound like Brother Jake Edwards.
Yeah, unless you're a narcissist. You don't really enjoy sitting there watching and listening to yourself. But the only person who can make the change is you.
Yeah.
And you can only make the change if you understand what needs to be changed, if you can hear it, if you can see it. So when I used to do interviews in the early days, I thought I was being very supportive of the people I was interviewing. So I was, oh yeah, And a few times while listening to that, I stopped that habit, the verbal listening, which was like so
See, I think I do that,
annoying.
Jill. I'm learning things now talking to you. I think I do that. I'm like, I feel like I need to let them know I'm listening. It's like a verbal, yeah, I do that, Jill. Should I stop?
It's all right. You're doing just fine.
But should I stop doing that whole
if it's
verbal listening?
Sometimes it's just too much.
Right.
And also, when we do interviews on the show, they're pulling those interviews for clips or whatever. So if you have a really good response from the mayor or whatever, the last thing the person cutting it wants is to hear me or anyone else going,
See, I don't have that problem, but I now wonder if less is more when it comes to the verbal listening cues.
I'm a big advocate of less is more on a lot of things.
You didn't know you were really here to train me. I'm not even recording this, Jill.
You'll get my bill.
Well, then I'm taking back that lasagna. It's quid pro quo over here. Okay, let's get you to Metro Morning. Because Metro Morning is really the only morning radio I ever hear, and I quite enjoy Metro Morning, and we're going to kind of dive into that. But how does the opportunity at Metro Morning arise for you?
They came to me and said, we want you to do Metro Morning. And there was a lot of hand-wringing on my part because I'm a night owl. I'm not an early morning person. And so I was really concerned about being able to be up and present and coherent and all of the things that you need to be to do early morning radio. I almost looked at it like maybe I'm being punished for all those times I missed the bus and I couldn't get up in time for school. My family found it quite ironic that that's sort of how my life sort of unfolded. And I was
what
now
year is
getting
it
up.
that they call you? What year is this?
So it was 20 years ago. So it would have been
04?
Yeah.
So from the time they launched News World, what is that, 1990 you said? But you're okay because you're tapped in late 89, I guess. You're tapped on the shoulder in the good way, because people get tapped in a different way now. But you were tapped on the shoulder in a good way. Hey, would you back up host for News World? And you did that for several years. So that's why you moved back to Toronto for Metro Morning?
No, I moved back to Toronto when the cuts came.
Okay.
I moved back to Toronto and then I got a call saying there is an opening. There is a job available in radio. Would you consider doing radio? And up till that point, I had just done television. And I thought about it. I said, well, I've never done it before, but I'm happy to give it a try. And it's like a lot of things. It's not in your life plan. It's not how you laid out your path,
right?
But it's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because you're looking at things again through a very different lens, and where television is very visual, and that's not to take away from anything that anybody does on television. It's tough. Television is tough. You need an ego. You need a real gravitas to sort of sit there in front of the camera.
You need to be a Ralph Benmergui, right?
Yeah. And I know Ralph very well. And Ralph was, he was a real force when it came to television. But radio, there's nothing to distract. It's the voice.
Right.
It's the way you are able to present yourself, articulate your thoughts, and connect with them in a very different emotional way. I found when I would meet people when I was in television, they would be very not into your space because they were quite cognizant of the screen being the dividing. I find when I meet people from radio, you're in their kitchen, you're in their car, you're just kind
You're
of
working out with
invading
them.
their space.
You're on their walks, their bike,
Yes.
they're walking the dog, and
Yeah.
you're in their headphones.
So they grab your hand.
Very intimate.
They feel a much more personal connection.
100%. They're like, oh yeah, I was listening to you on my road trip to whatever. We were driving to the cottage. Yeah, absolutely. I will tell you, because unlike Metro Morning, where you're typically listening live over the airwaves, like people will say, hey, you were the voice of we drove to Sudbury and we listened to your voice the entire way. And I'm like, oh, my condolences, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. But it's kind of an intimate one-way street that you really are with them in all these moments. Maybe they're making dinner. For you, it'd be breakfast, I suppose. So so you moved to Toronto. You talked about, is it the Mulrooney cuts? Yeah, Mulrooney cuts. These conservative governments and their CBC cuts. What's going on there? Okay, so you moved to Toronto before you get the call from Metro Morning saying, we want you, Jill Dempsey.
Well, I did the afternoon show first, so it wasn't for Metro Morning.
Okay.
I did the afternoon show for probably 10 years.
Well, we got to get all this right because, in 45 years, when you pass away, this audio archive will be the definitive Jill Dempsey record.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so I worked on the afternoon show, and then I was working on The World at 6, and that's when they came to me and said, we want you to do Metro Morning, and I really had to think about it. And I also had to say to myself, if you do take it, you can't complain. You cannot complain about the hours. You cannot complain about it. You have to do it and love it and make it work for your life. And so that's the pledge I made for myself.
Okay, question. So when you were on Here and Now, who was hosting?
I worked with Catherine O'Hara. I worked with Joan Melanson. I worked with Avril Benoit.
Right.
I did a little bit of work with Matt when he arrived.
Okay, so at this point, is Metro Morning's co-host Andy Barry?
Yes.
Have you talked to Andy anytime recent? Like, is there any Andy Barry update? A lot of people are curious how he's doing.
There's a group of us that sort of share information about Andy. So Andy is doing well. I saw Andy pre-pandemic, which was lovely. We had a lunch and another friend came up and we had a great visit. I love Andy and I love to tell this story about Andy. When I decided to take the job and I went into the studio for the first time, and he was so generous. He said to me, he goes, this is your show as much as it's mine. And I was just sort of taken aback because you think, well, yeah, but the show is really in your name. And he goes, no, anything you have to say, even if you have to interrupt me or correct me or whatever, you just put your hand up. But I want you to know you are just as much a part of this as I am. And I thought, wow, what a generous thing to say. That it was really, I was entering a partnership and I loved it. Now, Andy's hilarious because sometimes you do things I'm like, Andy, no. But, I really enjoyed that time at the round table, and I really enjoyed his generosity.
Andy Barry was fantastic on Metro Morning, and he's very much missed. Not hearing what a great voice. And then I felt like I thought it was a fantastic transition though, from Andy Barry to Matt Galloway.
Oh well, I was all for that.
Well, tell us more, Matt. Andy sadly never, I suppose it's not too late, but Andy's never been on Toronto Mike. Matt Galloway was a very early guest on Toronto Mike.
Yes.
It was wild. Tell him when you see him next or at the next CBC party when you bump into Matt, tell him to come back and kick out the jams with me.
I'll tell him.
He needs to come back and kick out the jams, but share with us a little bit, about that transition. So saying goodbye to Andy as a beloved host of Metro Morning.
It was very difficult because there were a lot of things that went on in Andy's life that were difficult. And, for him, the diagnosis of Parkinson's made it increasingly difficult to do that shift, to get up that early in the morning. It affects the voice. I mean, my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's during COVID, so was quite aware of some of the things that you're up against when you're dealing with that. And it would have been lovely to have him stay, but he understood that given the disease, he couldn't do that. Matt had been filling in. Andy was taking sort of Fridays off, and Matt was filling in, and so I was getting to him. And I felt it was, we're very different. Matt and I are very different people, but we really came together and gelled in terms of a partnership. And so I really felt that he was the right person, and so did a lot of other people. So that transition was incredibly smooth because I knew him, and I really, really wanted it to work. But I also knew Matt would succeed at anything he did because Matt is such a hard worker. Matt is one of those guys that, you'll get in your publications and we read the same things journalists do, read the same thing. And he'll say, "Did you read the article?" And I go, "I just got it last night." So his capacity for literally inhaling information in books, I don't know anybody else who does it the way he does it.
Well, half the battle there is giving a shit, right? Like he cares and he's passionate about it.
Oh, yes. But you have to care.
Right, but then it's like, yes, it's your job. You're being paid.
No, but it's more
when
than that.
when you care, I get the sense from Matt, anyways, and other broadcasters and yourself as well. Like when you care about what you're doing and you have passion for it, it doesn't come across like a job. It's not even particularly difficult to prep. Like what I'm doing right now actually is like I was super excited to put on the very hot 100% polyester 1967 CBC shirt, which people can see in the photo we're going to take afterwards by the Toronto tree, because I'm like, I'm going to sit down and talk to Jill Dempsey. I'm going to take at least an hour of her life, and we're going to, who knows where this is going to go. But I gave a shit.
Yeah.
Matt gives a shit.
He does. And
you can't
I
say
do
shit
too.
on the CBC, can you?
Well, sometimes we let it fly. Sometimes it's in the inside voice, right? It's the inside voice. I love what I do.
Right.
And everything that I do for my job, I would do if I was doing something else.
Right.
The documentaries, the reading, the consuming of all of that, the engagement would be my life regardless of what I did. So the fact that this is part of my job and my profession and I'm in it every day, for me, it's like winning the lottery.
So Matt Galloway, longtime host of Metro Morning, following Andy Barry. You're there again. You're that constant. You're that voice, that familiar, comforting
The
voice.
Constant.
Yeah,
The one
but
they
I think
can't
it's
get rid
important.
of.
Well, listen, I'm going to suggest something to you in a moment here. Is that so? Matt decides he wants to do something else, and he's going to.
Well, it was time. Matt had done the show for 10 years,
Current?
and he wanted to do longer form interviews.
Right. And inspired by Toronto Mike, he's like, I need to do longer form interviews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our conversation when he took the job, he had to tell me before it was formally announced, and I said, "Oh my God, I feel like you're breaking up with me."
Right.
But I'm thrilled for him, and it's such a good fit for Matt, and it's a good fit for the CBC.
So when Matt Galloway moves on to do the Current, and now you need a new host. So you you went from Andy Barry to Matt Galloway.
Yes.
Why not Jill Dempsey? This is my thought at the time. Now I know you're going to be careful. You are Jill Dempsey, but were you given you're there already? You're already great at what you do. You're already a familiar voice, a fantastic voice. You're just fantastic at what you do. I hope you know that, and that's why they keep you around. That's why they don't want to get rid of you. But why not Jill Dempsey, host of Metro Morning?
I didn't apply for it, and I also thought, I'm a very pragmatic person in terms of the evolution of the show. They needed to develop new voices. They had to do that. And they needed...
Roz and Mocha have been doing the show at 92.5 for, what is it now, 30 years?
Yeah,
I've lost track.
I know. But I also, you have to think about what's best for the show, what's best in terms of the dynamic in the city. And I didn't apply.
Okay, Jill, you didn't apply. That answers that question. But now I'm also just going to remind you that we started off this program talking about Deanie Petty and City Line. And the successor was a woman named Marilyn Dennis, who is still doing mornings at Chum 104.5. She's been there since the mid-'80s.
Sure.
So what is? There's not like what? There's no clock on this thing. People.
Well, I mean, I still love what I do and what I bring
Sure,
to the
of course.
program. It doesn't mean that I can't
Okay.
backup host. I still do that. It doesn't.
But do you
mean-
ever wonder if you any regrets that you didn't go like apply for post Matt Galloway? And we can talk about before David Common gets the gig, but. Any regrets that you didn't go for it? That you could be the host of Metro Morning, the most popular morning show in the biggest city in this country.
Well, I am part of the biggest,
No, I know.
right? And I've been a
course
part
you
of
are.
it for a long
course.
time. And I also think that I've contributed to the success of the program. So I don't have any regrets.
No regrets.
Pretty comfortable in what I do.
Okay. Now, before we get to David Common, who recently made his Toronto Mike debut, he actually doesn't
Yes.
live too far from here. I'm just wondering what you can say about Ismail Alpha, who I believe came from Winnipeg for the job, if
Yes.
I'm correct there. And
During the pandemic,
was that during the pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay. I listened to Metro Mornings, as I disclosed off the top, so I can tell you I rooted for the guy, but it never sounded right to me. And I'm not saying he did a bad job. I just think his personality type in the show never seemed to jive in a way I was hoping it would start to jive. And I guess I'm not alone, and I don't know if he just decided to do something on weekends or whatnot, but before you know it, there was an opening again.
well, he made a decision that he wanted to do something else, and that's his right to do that. I think the hard thing about radio and the hard thing about a 3-hour current affairs program is you're juggling a lot of balls. And it's just, Matt makes it sound easy. Andy made it sound easy. David makes it sound easy, but it's not. It's all consuming. It requires an enormous amount of time. And it's tough. It's tough going. And if there are other things in your life that require your attention, it's tough to do both.
So he, I believe he took the weekend gig, right? Is
Yes.
is that Fresh Air? I got
Yes,
my
it
names of
is.
everything all mixed up. And you had some Fresh Air experience. Like you filled in on Fresh
Sure.
Air.
I think I filled in on almost everything, to be frank.
That's true. That's true.
I
Now
like to dabble.
you like to dabble. Well,
Yeah.
you're good at everything. So you're like the glue. We can stick you anywhere. You're like Phil Hartman was on Saturday Night Live. Just give it to Jill here. Okay. So how do you think David Common is doing as host of Metro Morning?
I think he's waking people up. I think he keeps people on the edge of their seats. I love David's humor. I love that he has an ability to play, which is fun for me because you never know sometimes what's coming. And he leaves a lot of room for other people at the table to kind of join in and make them part of the conversation. But he's also a very strong journalist. So he brings a lot of positives to the table.
I just popped over to the live stream. So you're live at live.torontomike.com, and there's a number of people to shout out. Hello to Jeremy Hopkin, but I want to shout out Canada Kev, who says, hi to Jill, who I worked with many years ago. You may remember Kevin from Learning and Development at CBC.
Hello.
Okay, so you do. And you look sincere too, because I feel, how would you play that if you didn't? I might fake it. Like I don't want to hurt Kevin's feelings. I got to fake it now. But I can tell by your eyes that you remember Kevin. So hello to Canada Kev, and yeah, Jeremy's drawing the lines between me wearing the shirt and the bulldog mascot costume at the game yesterday. Which I know how she felt.
I'm telling you got to get a mister.
I gotta get a Mister. Mister. You remember this? Mister. What was that
yes.
song called again? Something about wings?
Broken wings.
Broken wings. Jill, what is your jams? Like
I'm
I
here
know
to help.
I said Matt Galloway is gonna come by and kick out the jams one day, and one day you should too. But what kind of jams do you listen to?
Oh my gosh. I have a very eclectic taste, but I was just the other night, I went to see Elvis Costello and Daryl Hall.
How
on
was it? I
Father's Day.
heard sparsely attended, but it sounds like a good
Yeah,
time.
but it was a good time
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
The grass wasn't full, and some people, maybe it was past their bedtime or whatever. I stayed till the end.
For
But
sure.
No, it was great. There were a few sound issues, I thought. But I've seen Elvis before at Massey Hall. Loved him. First time seeing Daryl Hall. So, you get to check that off your list.
And you don't care if Oates is there because you're there for Daryl
He was
Hall.
oatless. I was very clear it was going to be an oatless Daryl Hall.
Do you think they would have sold more tickets of even just having the name Hall & Oates?
Maybe.
It's funny how that works, right? Because we're not too sure what Oates does. and you don't need the oats, but for some reason the branding, like if you're calling it Daryl Hall, it doesn't sell as well as Hall and Oates.
Well, it's tough to shift at this stage in your life, right? But he did very well and played all the hits that people remember. But I went to Charlotte Cardin in February at Massey Hall, Florence and the Machine.
Nice.
I just love a lot of. I'm
Same
willing
hair
to try
color
that
as
stuff.
Florence. And,
Yeah, she's a redhead.
right. Okay. So you're all over the place, but sounds like I'm thinking of Canada Kev was at that concert you're referring to with Daryl Hall and Elvis Costello. He was there because I saw a photo of him and the VP of sales at that show. So look at that. You could have been passing the Dutchie with Canada Kev all these years, all these years later. So, okay. So back to Metro Morning. Again, I mentioned David Common made his Toronto Mike debut fairly recently. I can't remember when that was, but it was in the last 6 months, I think. And I wore this shirt for him. I wear it for you. I wore it for Tom Harrington.
Oh, wow.
Did you know Tom Harrington had a hell of a voice?
Of course. Absolutely.
Did you know he used to sing on the Tommy Hunter show?
That I didn't know.
Fun facts. You got to listen to Tom Harrington on Toronto Mike. Okay, Jill, now I want the day in the life of a typical Metro Morning. So what time is, because you said you're a night owl.
Yeah.
What time is that alarm going off?
So I have 4 alarm clocks.
Oh!
I don't mess around. And the symphony starts at 4:20.
Shout out to Canada Kevin, his Dutchie he's passing, 4:20. Okay, so 4:20 an alarm goes off.
Yes.
And that gets you up, but you don't get
No,
out of
I
bed.
put it on snooze. So there's a bit of psychology involved.
I feel like taking notes on this. Hold on.
Well,
Okay,
the thing is,
4:20 an
I
alarm
have to
goes
have
off.
the ability to put it on snooze for 8 minutes because I need to feel that I have some degree of control over this madness. Some degree of control.
Okay.
And so I put it on snooze, then another alarm rings, and I have to physically get up to turn
Does that
it
other
off.
alarm ring at 4:28?
No, 4:25.
Okay, so 5 minutes. Okay. So at 4, so you get an alarm at 4:20.
Yeah.
So now you're waking from your slumber, but
Yeah.
you're not getting out of bed.
No.
That second alarm at 4:25.
Yeah.
No fooling around, Jill.
I have
you
to
gotta get out of
out.
bed.
Yeah. And then I usually go down and just like, I have 3 more minutes. And then the snooze alarm goes off. And then I get up and I start getting ready. And then I have another 2 alarms just in case those fail. Because I have slept in twice.
In your long career on Metro Morning, 2 times you slept in. What's that day like when you wake up and you see the clock and you're like, oh, I don't know what it is. Oh, crap, it's 7:45. I don't know.
Well, it's like anybody who's slept in, but for me, it just feels like I can't breathe because my first newscast is at 5:30. So I have to scramble and literally throw myself together and grab everything and run down. And the one time I did it, oh my God, God bless him. My cab driver was waiting for me. And I come running down. I was like 15 minutes behind. And he goes, I was so worried. I says, just go.
So you have like a regular driver?
A sort of a rotation of cab drivers.
That's interesting. Because I was going to say, isn't there at some point someone's phoning you, Jill, and saying, Jill, you're late.
I did have that during the pandemic where I was like out cold. And the alarms actually malfunctioned, and 2 of them malfunctioned at the same time. So they died.
What are the odds?
Literally, what are the odds? So apparently everybody in the control room was quite jealous that I got the extra sleep, but you don't want to get that call because the person on the end is quite grim about it. Good morning. You know you slept
Jill.
in. It's like
Jill, this is the CBC. This isn't some silly podcast in a Southern Etobicoke basement. Okay, Jill? This is the CBC.
I know.
Wow. Okay.
I know.
So,
but I'm human.
You're only human.
I'm human.
Oh, that's Billy Joel? No, who was it? Only Human. Yeah, that's a Billy Joel song, I think. Okay. So, Jill, this question you've been asked more than any other question in your career. What time are you going to bed so that you can be up at, I want to say 4:20, but let's face it, it's 4:25. Okay, Jill? What time are you going to bed?
9-ish.
So what do you do? Like, okay, are you a sports fan?
Yep.
Okay, what do you do tomorrow night? Tomorrow night? Yeah.
I'm going to be watching Argentina and Canada at 8 o'clock.
Are you off this week?
No. Yeah.
I guess so. 8 o'clock start because that's what I'm going to be doing too. I'm all in on this Team Canada soccer team.
Of course.
I know.
I'm also in on Wimbledon too.
Okay.
But that works better for my schedule.
Right, because they're in England, right? So the Euros, you're good on the Euros because there's a big Euro match tomorrow too.
Yeah.
So Euros fine, but the Copa, and that last game was a 9:00 start when Canada beat Venezuela. So, and I can't remember.
It's a Friday though.
Okay, that's true. That's a Friday. Okay, so tomorrow, which is a Tuesday night, this is
Yes.
important. I understand this. So you will, what if it goes to penalty kicks? And this game, you're just going to be tired. Is this just the price
I'm
you
going to
pay
be
for Canada,
horizontal,
Argentina?
but I'm still going to have it on.
Okay.
I'm going to try to get through because I feel that is my duty.
Well, it's going to be amazing. And I kind of love this underdog role. Like, we're kind of playing with house money. Like, no one expects Canada. The way I was telling my oldest who doesn't care about soccer, I'm like, forever we can talk about how we went further than Brazil in the Copa. Like, our first Copa, we went further than Brazil. We're in the semifinals.
But don't you think there's something about not having that kind of pressure?
Yeah, yes.
I think
We're playing with house money.
Look at what happened at Wimbledon yesterday.
See, tell me. I'm
Well,
out of the Wimbledon loop.
Emma Raducanu was out, and she was beaten by somebody who came into the tournament unseeded. Coco Gauff was defeated by another American, Emma Navarro, who just came out of college tennis and was sort of on the radar, but not entirely on the radar. So I sometimes think when you don't have any pressure, it's better. When the expectations are low, you actually succeed.
I think you're onto something there, and I think that Canada playing with house money, with no one expecting them to beat Argentina, let's surprise the world.
Yeah. What's your prediction? I got you, didn't I?
Okay. A 1-0 final. This doesn't even get to penalty kicks. Canada beats Argentina 1-0. Yeah. See how I say nil when I talk soccer, but I would never say nil if I was talking about the Leafs.
That's
So
true.
what's that about? Okay. All right. What is your favorite sport to watch on television?
Right now it's tennis.
I
love
like
tennis.
rooting for Canadians in Grand Slams, but Canadians haven't done particularly well since Layla made that final, which was now a few years ago. Like,
Yeah.
I know Bianca won the U.S.
Bianca won
Open,
the
but
US
that was
Open.
2019, maybe. I
Yeah,
feel.
that was
Like
pretty
5 years
amazing.
ago. It was
Yeah.
amazing, but. And I'm not saying, well, what have you done for me lately? But
But you're saying, what have you done for me?
because
lately?
there was a crop still
Yeah.
is, I guess, of young Canadian talent.
There's
And
still
we
a
were
crop.
kind of yeah, of course, Denis Shapovalov and Felix, and we were kind of promised, competitive tennis in Grand Slams, and I'm not too sure we've
Well,
got that as a country.
But look at the field. I mean, look at the field that they're up against. You've got, the wonder kid, Carlos Alcaraz, and you've got Novak Djokovic, who is hanging on.
won't go away.
He won't go away. He refuses to go away, right? And then you have I think Medvedev is a really good player, competitive.
Sure.
There's
your tennis.
Sinner,
Okay.
Yannick Sinner, world number 1.
I hope Brian Gerstein, Property in the Six, is listening now. That guy's a tennis head, and he loves it when the tennis talk comes on Toronto Mike. So amazing there. Okay, so you will watch this match tomorrow night. You'll just be
Yes.
a little tired when that alarm goes off at 4:20.
That's okay.
Yeah,
We can make it
that's
up.
the price. But that's an 8:00 start. I'm just wondering, I guess you don't watch the Oscars or something like that.
I tape the Oscars.
Okay.
I tape the Oscars. Some things I tape. So I have a rule. I have lots of rules about working the shift. I'm full of them. But one of my rules is I can go out on a Thursday night,
Okay.
right? So I went to the concert Thursday night to see Elvis Costello and Daryl Hall.
Right.
I didn't get home till 11:30. I can do that because I only have one more day. I can't do that on a Sunday night or
I get
Monday
this.
night or a Tuesday,
Right.
right? So I have to sort of manage my energy. And then in the fall, I teach, right, in the afternoons. So I've got to sort of really be careful about how I manage my energy and my stamina.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about teaching in just a second here. So we talked about you get a 5:30 newscast, and that 4:25 is when you're hopping out of bed.
That's right.
So what time do you arrive at the studio?
5:00.
So 5:00, you're at the studio, and what's the first thing you do there? Like, you just start writing?
I sit down. I go. Well, I'm going through all of the BBC and all of the sort of news feeds that I have on my phone in the cab on the way in. I can't go to bed at night until I've actually gone through all of my usual Guardian, New York Times, all of that before I go to bed, just to have a sense of I know where the world is when I went to bed. It may have changed by the time I wake up, but
Sure.
at least I know where I'm at before I went to bed.
Okay. And so when you take a vacation, do you stay as abreast of what's happening in your world as you would when you were working, or is it like you just follow what you need to know, and then you cram kind of before you get back to.
No, I try to keep on top of it.
Right.
I was in Turkey in April for 2.5 weeks.
Do you know they don't call it Turkey anymore?
I know, Turkey.
Turkey, I want to
Yeah.
say, or Turkey.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you get a memo at the CBC? Like you newsreaders get a memo, and like, hey, from now on, it's Turkey.
Well, we do about certain things, right? Just so that it's consistent. I mean, pronunciation is important.
Well, what do you call in Czech Republic at the CBC these days? Like, because in hockey land, we're calling it Czechia. Like,
Yeah.
did you get a memo? Hey, henceforth, when you refer to Czech Republic, let's call it Czechia. That's like the CBC
I haven't
standards.
you know what? I haven't come across that, so I don't. I have like, if you can imagine, it's our language guide is massive.
Right. So when Czechia makes its way in, you let me know.
I'll let you know.
Hey, can I shout out? We talked about newsreaders, and I did shout out Tom Harrington, and there's been a number of CBC people who have dropped by. But I do want to shout out a recent guest who kind of gave us some insight into how the news stuff was working on CBC radio across the country. But I want to shout out Neil Herland.
Neil.
Neil was fantastic in his Toronto Mike debut, and I see it was the last day of May. No, it was in May. It was in May, so not too long ago. So shout out to Neil Herland. So the guys doing that work, you listen to their most recent news?
I can actually go in and see what it is that they're actually doing. And so we have access. Neil is fantastic because Neil sort of tracks what's going on internationally overnight and nationally if there's any developments. So there's content there. And then our reporters leave us pieces, usually original pieces we have in the morning for the morning run. And then I also check to make sure that nothing has happened overnight in the city itself.
Right. Okay. Pretty cool. Now, we're going to talk about how you train hosts and newsreaders and you teach future journalists, and we're going to talk about that. But what time? So Metro Morning's done at like 8:30.
Yes, but I still have newscasts at 9, 10, and 11.
Were you working on September 11th, 2001?
No.
Okay.
I have this terrible, reputation for being away when there are massive stories. And it's the funny thing about it is we usually are not allowed to take vacation during ratings, which is September or October. They prefer that we not. And I had already booked this trip with my mom and dad to the East Coast. And the words I said to my boss was, I said, what could possibly go wrong? So, of course, when I returned after 9/11, when we were lucky to get home and, watch the skies go quiet over the little house that we were staying in near Chester, Nova Scotia, my boss said to me, yes, what could possibly go wrong?
That's wild.
I've been away for Walkerton.
Okay.
I watched the coverage of Walkerton of my colleagues when I was in Dubai. I've missed some big.
Well, you know what this tells me? You need to tell me when you're taking vacation days.
That's what my colleagues say.
Because that's when I'm going to go into like the bomb shelter with my canned food and my bottled water.
Yeah.
Okay. Does any part of you, now it was a horrific day. I'm not trying to suggest anything other than the fact that it was a worst day. I remember it very well. Worst day. But from a journalist perspective, do you wish you were working that day?
Yes and no. I think it was one of those moments in time when I was grateful to be with my parents. And we consumed a lot of information that day, a lot of information. We had the radio on, and then I remember going to a laundromat in Bridgewater, and we hadn't seen the planes going into the towers. So that was the first time that we saw that. And part of me is grateful that I didn't see all of it in real time, that there was some kind of built-in protection with that. I actually had to say to my sisters at one point, because they were quite distraught, and I actually said, you need to stop watching this. Yeah. You need to actually pull away and you need to regroup.
Right.
So yes, part of me, yes, but the other part of me is I almost felt like I was protected in a way from the difficulties.
No,
of
very
that
interesting.
day.
Now, from a Toronto perspective, though, a familiar, comforting voice to deliver news when everyone is starving for whatever updates you have.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on? What's next? Because that was what I remember from that day was as
Yes.
things unfolded, you don't know what's next because it wasn't, we talk about it like it wasn't just two planes hitting the World Trade Center.
No.
There was a flight went down in Pennsylvania. There was the
Yep.
Pentagon was hit.
All the planes around the world
Right.
were
But
grounded.
we don't, so that's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So we now know 4
Mm-hmm.
planes, but we don't know if there's a 5th because we don't know what we don't know. And that feeling of like, what's next? I never will forget that feeling of
Yes.
what's next.
And, really shout out to my colleagues because I watched their coverage.
Right.
And, they did it with a level of professionalism, I think, that was incredibly important. The thing about doing those kinds of stories is you're cognizant of the gravity of the story. But you also, at the same time, I like to be conscious of somebody's taking this in for the very first time.
Right.
And so tonally, you have to be careful because it's just exchanging very difficult or imparting very difficult information to the audience. And I'm always cognizant of the tone has to be reflective of that. You should never be doing those kinds of stories with a sense of, oh boy, or joy, or wow, guess what I know that you don't know. You have to really think about the human elements that are involved in these particular stories.
Yeah, just let me know next time you're taking a vacation. Okay, Jill, that's the deal we have here. I
All
need
right.
to know because if you're taking a vacation, shit's going down somewhere. Okay, and I need to be on high alert.
Okay.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, so as I teased, I want to close with some chats about you training hosts and newsreaders and about your teaching future journalists and everything. I had a question I was going to ask you because I'm like, oh, I need to ask her about somebody, and then I caught myself, if you will, and because I firmly believe like a public figure does not. If you're a public figure, and you're a public figure because you're on our terrestrial airwaves every morning, but if you're a public figure, we don't have the right to know personal things like health information and stuff. So what I'm going to do right now is put into the world, because another FOTM who I wore this shirt for is Jill Deacon,
Yes.
host of Here and Now.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been public with a couple of things. We know about her battles with cancer,
Yes.
and then she went public with long COVID battles.
Yes.
But the fact is, we still hear on Here and Now filling in for Jill Deacon.
Yes.
And we still have Jill's jukebox.
Yes.
Right? But I've lost track, but it feels like it's been at least 18 months since I've heard Jill Deacon on Here and Now. So I'm just going to throw in the universe. I don't know what you can say because it's Jill Deacon's story to share, but that she is great at that, and I love her voice. I got to put that in current tense. And she's missed. So I just want Jill, I hope Jill's doing okay. And
I hope so.
the longer we're without her voice on the airwaves, I think, it just concerns me. So I want to put some love in the universe for Jill Deacon.
We all want to put some love in the universe for Jill Deacon. And Jill is very good at updating her own stories. So I certainly don't want to step on her toes in
right.
that response.
And I know it's her private health information. We shouldn't be sharing that. But she is missed on the airwaves. That is for sure. All right. So tell us what you do. I was reading that you train hosts and newsreaders. Is that within the CBC you do that?
I did do a lot of that within the CBC. I do, because I'm sort of busier with teaching right now. It's mostly with younger people. And then I do have people who come to me and ask me, can you listen to this? Could you help me with this or help me with that?
But enough about me sending you episodes of Toronto Mike.
Well, the thing is, when I started a very long time ago, there was a certain style in terms of presentation and an expectation that the voice, and that's why I struggled with
the
my voice.
gravitas.
The gravitas.
Right.
It was usually a man with a very deep voice. And there were questions about, well, how can a woman be credible? Her voice doesn't have that sort of deep baritone that a man does.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in people sort of, first of all, finding what is your voice, right? And getting comfortable with that and learning to like it. I think that's really important. And if we're talking about a world where brands are really important, what is your brand? It is your voice that is only unique to you. And the more I learned to get comfortable with what I brought to the table and who I was, because, as you, in the early days of your career, everybody has an idea of who should be. Don't laugh if that's funny, don't have a sense of humor. And it's like, but I do have a sense of humor. If I don't laugh, then the joke is on me because it sounds like I've missed it. Right. So it's about really finding your essence. Who am I? And then get comfortable with it. And then the rest is going to fall into place. But when I work with people, I'm not telling them you need to sound like this. I'm trying to give them permission to sound like themselves.
Authenticity.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing? 'Cause this is my thing. It's like, this is, this might not be polished. And I always joke, this is not the CBC, but it sounds like you're saying the same thing.
Well,
which is find your voice.
And as I say to people, someone says, "Oh, you tripped over that word." I go, "Well, I'm not a robot.
Right.
I'm a human being."
Can you say brewery?
Brewery? Any other tricky words?
Brewery trips me up constantly, and it's only in my intro and outro of every episode of 1500 of these things.
Well, I feel for you.
How is your beer, by the way?
It's very good and very cold, and I appreciate that.
Fresh
Thank
from the
you.
fridge and fresh from, that's brewed in southern Etobicoke. So, they make that champagne in France or whatever, south of France. And I'm telling you, that delicious craft beer, south of Etobicoke. Shout out to Great Lakes Brewery. Okay, so you encourage authenticity, because I can tell you as a listener, I find myself craving authenticity. Like, we joked earlier about the FM DJs from back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sick of that BS, like of that whole phony baloney delivery stuff shtick. I'm so sick of shtick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want an authentic voice, and I can adapt to. You know who's great? Marcia Young. Okay,
she's a hoot. She's a hoot.
Okay, I'm just thinking of all the people who saw me in this
She's
shirt.
authentic.
Yeah, I bumped literally the day after she was here. I bumped into her at the art gallery, and it's like and they've never bumped into her since. It was like the next day.
She's out there.
She's out there. I gotta find Marcia Young. Okay, so I'm off track here, but so you encourage for future journalists to find your voice, and don't try to mimic this traditional newsreader like this.
I think we all
Ken
do.
Brockman.
Sure, but I mean, I think everybody does that when you start. You have a particular person that you idolize or you like what they do, and you think, well, if I can sound like this person, then it's all going to be great. I mean, I remember in the early days trying to drop my voice really low and trying to sound like I knew what I was talking about, and it was exhausting, and it was not sustainable.
It is if you smoke cigarettes and drink whiskey.
Yeah. No, I don't do that. No, don't do that. This was, naturally developed.
So when you have now, I'm gonna try to keep you out of trouble, but you're a very smart woman who's not gonna say anything that'll get her in trouble. But what do you say to the future journalists out there when the pie seems to be shrinking in terms of job opportunities in this country? And then now you're at the CBC where you've been forever, and we're on the verge, possibly, if you believe polls, it looks like we might be on the verge of a conservative government taking power in this country. And the leader, Pierre Poilievre, has said he will defund the CBC. Like, what is that? Like, I can't imagine that's good for morale. Like, are people concerned about what will happen, next year?
I think if you look at any profession in the economy that we're in right now, people are concerned, and rightfully so. But at the same time, and what I say to people all the time is, you just have to keep doing good work, right? The integrity of the work is really what should come to the forefront. And if you have the audience and you have the support of the audience, then the audience will be vocal about what they want and what they don't want.
Keep your chin up and do the work, Dawn. That's from Mad Men, right? That's when Freddie says, "Do the work, Dawn." Just continue to do the good work.
Well, I sort of, but I've always sort of felt like that. I mean, you can't make people like you. You can't make people do something they don't want to do. So you have to be true to yourself and follow your own path in terms of integrity and storytelling and good journalism. And it's something I try to do, and I know many of my colleagues try to do exactly the same thing. That's all you can do.
All right. So aside from that, there seems to be a movement afoot, particularly from those on the right side of the political spectrum, to discredit the media. Like, I know I've talked privately to people, not at the CBC necessarily, but people who would drive cars with their news logo on it, who have changed to cars without the news logo on it, so they are not targets, because people seem to be attacking and blaming media for things that are completely unfair. Any concerns that this?
Well,
nature.
I would like to see is a realm where we can have conversations and ask questions and it's not taken personally. So you have a right to ask somebody why. You have a right to ask somebody, how did we get there? And I would really like to see the heat in terms of the conversation dialed down a bit so we can actually sit at the table and have a reasonable conversation. And it's difficult because I don't think that this is just an issue in this country. It's sort of a global situation in terms of information and the waves of information that are coming out at people and where they get it and whether or not it has ethical integrity. And that's an issue.
No, well said. Absolutely. Now, what's next for you, Jill? So we have you happily rocking and rolling on Metro Morning, which I'm told by David Common and others is the most listened to morning radio show in the city of Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
And I would guess, just like anecdotally, that if you're the number one morning show in the city of Toronto, you're the number one show in Toronto. Because morning is
where it's at.
Yeah,
They keep telling us that.
That's where it's at here. So you're on the number one radio show in the country.
Yes.
We can say that.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. So is this like you're there? You're part of this number one radio show in the country. Or do you actually have aspirations? Like one day, hey, when Adrian Arsenault steps down, I'm taking that gig. Like,
well,
where
that's
do you
not
want to go?
happening. Listen, I can't fill Adrian's shoes. Adrian is amazing. I am in awe of Adrian Arsenault and what she does.
I want to get her on Toronto Mic'd. That's my goal, and to get her on Toronto Mic'd.
I think you'd love her. She's a fantastic person, but she's just she is an amazing journalist. I'm happy what I'm doing right now. I've never been one that says the next thing. I just sort of, I love to see what's behind the door, and I love sometimes not knowing what's behind that door. I think, sometimes the best opportunities of our lives are not ones that we've created, but land on our lap.
When you were on TV, did anyone ever mistake you for Valerie Pringle?
No.
Never happened.
No, it didn't happen.
And it's not happening now, Jill. I just asked just
happen.
a random question out of nowhere. How was this? Good experience for you? Is it everything you hoped it would be? Did you know you were going to get such swag?
Well, I'm just overwhelmed by the swag. How was it for you, more importantly?
It was great. I had the great Jill Dempsey's voice in my headphones for over an hour. Former CBCer Bruce Dobigan self-published a book with his son, Evan, about the biggest trades in NHL history, and he self-published it, which means it's a tough go when you self-publish something. So I give out copies to sports fans like you, just so it's an excuse for me to tell the listenership that this book exists. It's called Deal With It by Bruce and Evan Dobigan. That copy is yours. You're taking that home with you.
All right. Little late night reading.
You can read more about the Gilmore trade, the Gretzky trade, the Patrick Waugh trade, the trades that stunned the NHL. And thanks for doing this. I know you're a busy woman. You're up at 5. Sorry, I said 5. You're up at 4:20. 4:20 your alarm goes off, and you still carved out time to hang with me. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Mike. It was great to meet you.
And soon I can take off this shirt, which makes me very, very happy.
Then we'll get you under the mister. Mister.
Broken Wings, right? Did they have a second song? I can't think of a second Mr. Mister song.
I can't.
But Broken Wings, I can sing it to you right now. It's like it was released yesterday.
Don't.
Well, you don't know. I could be the Tom Harrington of podcasters with that
could.
voice of mine, okay? And that brings us to the end of our 1,518th show. You can follow me, Twitter, Blue Sky. I'm all over the place. Instagram at Toronto Mike, but you can go to torontomike.com. Hey, Jill, is there a social media channel that you maintain if people want to, follow what you're up to?
Oh, I don't, but I do check in at
You don't have to.
I do check in at CBC Jill Dempsey from time to time.
Okay, well, that's where I'll tag at CBC Jill Dempsey. I'll tag you when I post this in about 10 minutes. Much love to all who made this possible. Again, that's Great Lakes Brewery, who are sending Jill home with some fresh craft beer. Palma Pasta, who sent over a delicious frozen lasagna for Jill. RecycleMyElectronics.ca, who should have sent something over for Jill. What are we doing there, guys? The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. You've got that book on the history of Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. I can't wait to return. And everybody should listen to yesterday's episode. Rich Butler, former Blue Jay, was on. Mike Richards was my co-host. Joel Goldberg, I mentioned. Blair Packham from the Jitters. It was awesome. You got to check that out. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Quickly going to find out. See, at CBC, you'd be prepared, but I don't know who my next guest is. So I am going into my calendar to tell everybody the next episode of Toronto Mic'd. Okay, it's the second episode. We do this every quarter. It's FOTM Cast with Cam Gordon and the VP of Sales, Tyler Campbell. And we're going to recap everything in the Toronto Mic'd universe from the previous quarter, which means this episode is ineligible because this is actually next quarter. So we can't talk about Jill Dempsey's debut, but we're going to have a lot to talk about. Everything from Ben Johnson to Bob Ray. See you all then.